Some sort of performance from Southeast Melbourne this afternoon. One can't land a late blow. Foster misses out himself. Statement made from Southeast Melbourne. They take on the top of the table, Adelaide 36ers, and do a number on them. 108-89, the final score. Some thinking for the 36ers to do now.
No Nathan Sobey, no worries for Southeast Melbourne. I would say that was the most consequential game and consequential result of what, from afar, looked like an absolutely fantastic HoopsFest in Perth over the last 4 or 5 days. This is the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. Kane Pittman alongside Olgun. We will talk about that game. We'll get all the reaction from Olgs, who was on the ground in Perth. We will talk about Luke Paul. Don't call him Logan Paul, which I will throughout this podcast. And potentially another star point guard for Australian hoops. We'll have some sound from that chat. And while you were in Perth, Olgs, I was in Philly hanging out with Tyrese Proctor for a little bit. So we've got some Tyrese Proctor sound as well. It was a really productive, 36 hours that we had in Philly. So this is going to be a really fun show. As always, rate, review, do all that stuff. Get involved in the comments on the YouTube page. I'll be in there. I'll see it. I'll respond to it. We love the feedback and love everyone that listens to this podcast wherever you do it. Olgun, hello to you. How are you? Just back from Perth. What are we talking, 12, 13 hours ago?
Right around that. Yeah, I flew in yesterday, so I got in last night. Podcast this morning. I had a really good time, though. Perth, I feel like I got kept very, very busy over there, which I enjoyed. WNBL, NBL games. It's funny that the best game of the whole week was still probably the first game of the week, which was the Perth Lynx against Bendigo Spirit. And Ali Wilson was crazy good. Han Shu was awesome. Annalie Maley was great. It was such an exciting game. But no, really cool week. Everyone's there. A lot of NBA people there. So you sort of, it's late nights, it's early mornings. You kept really busy. A lot of news out of the week. A lot of sort of developments, like title changing developments out of the week. And it was cool to interact with fans. Kane, Perth fans in Perth, they're audacious. They come up to you, they chat with you, they argue with you. It's so much fun. We did a live overtime. So Perth was everything that was cracked up. I'm excited for next year already.
Well, you led me right where I wanted to go, Olgun, because we understand, particularly on this podcast and everyone that listens to this podcast, that your profile has been building over the last few years. There's no doubt. The Olgun Uluc fan base has been growing. Your presence has been getting bigger and stronger by the season. And I have been told, reliably told, that yes, there was some handshakes. Yes, there was some greetings with fans. There was a few photos that were taken. But I also have been told that there was a few Olgun Uluc autographs that were signed. Can you confirm or deny that this went down over the last 4 or 5 days?
It was great. I signed a shirt. There were some fans after we did a live overtime. A lot of the fans came around. Some asked for photos, and a pair of fans asked us. Derek Rucker was there. Damon Lowry, Pete Hawley. They asked us to sign a shirt, and I felt, because I'm not like an autograph giver. That's not what my job is.
That is
not.
Like
the concept kind of like writing my signature on a thing just felt illegal. Like it didn't feel right at all. But no, like I said, the fans were very cool. Like the audacity of some of them. They come up to you, they'll argue with you, they'll chat with you, they'll come into like parts of the arena that they're definitely not allowed, just to chit chat. And I appreciate that. And also the NBL community is quite small. So everyone knows each other. And so prominent fans, like, who they are. So putting faces to names, it was probably the most enjoyable part of HoopsFest.
Yeah, I must admit, I like hanging out with you and all the guys that we see that doing the broadcast and that type of stuff. So looking at it from afar and seeing the interactions on Twitter and how much fun the fans were having, we saw it a little bit when the New Orleans Pelicans came to Melbourne, and it felt like a gathering of basketball people, the basketball community. It seemed like that was it again. And as someone that was from the outside, just looking at it from afar, inside RAC Arena, the big screen, the player entrances, I thought that was really awesome. It made it, have this big event feel. But let's get to some of the real pressing questions from HoopsFest outside of what happened on the court. So, there has been talk, and understandably so, that there are other cities around Australia that might want it. You've been to HoopsFest a couple of times. Clearly a big win doing it in January rather than to start the season. But do you feel, as this thing continues to gather momentum, that this should be in Perth and you really want to lock it in to the city and what it can provide at this time of year?
So I'm not married to the idea of it just sticking in Perth. I like the idea of it moving, whether it's, maybe you have it 2 years in one location, 2 years in another, just so you can create some momentum. That probably sounds like a good thing. The idea of it being so far away from the rest of Australia probably limits the amount of fans from other teams that can go there. Yeah, there are a lot of them. We saw plenty of fans from every team. The Jack Jumpers are always really good travelers. The United fans during that game as well. But I have a feeling if you put this in Adelaide or if you put on one of the East Coast states, you'll probably get a different mix of fans. But in saying that, the Wildcats fans are so passionate that they're going to come out to everything, even the games that the Wildcats and the Lynx aren't involved in. So there is value there too. I know there are talks about potentially other cities hosting it. I would be for that. I would also be for adding another element to HoopsFest. So this one we had the games, like you said, the big jumbotron thing and the entrances. I thought that was better. Well, that was better done than last season. Last season was like the big boombox thing, which it was exciting in the moment, but it didn't really look amazing. This one, you had the whole sort of side of the baseline big screen was just stats. I thought that looked really cool. It was really high definition as well. I like the idea of adding maybe like last season, the Basketball Without Borders camp, some sort of other camp. So all the NBA teams that were there, around 15 teams represented, so they have something else to do as opposed to just sort of hanging around during the day, doing meetings and then going to games. I want something else there. But I'm a proponent of this being just somewhere else, just because I feel like you can get a bigger diversification of fans if you put it, not so far away from the rest of Australia.
It's interesting because the travel stuff does make sense. And we know that kids obviously are in school holidays. So they're definitely more likely to go in January than they would be at the start of the season around September, as we pointed to. I wonder how the fans feel. So again, jump in the comments because I do think that Perth fans, as you said, they seem fully bought in. Is there anyone that's listening to the podcast that traveled out there and loved the idea of not only catching some basketball, but going to some world-class beaches in your time off away from RAC Arena? Like, it's a very attractive part of the world to hold an event like this. I guess it can just be a little costly. I also like the fact when you talk about the big screen, they may as well do that because I know there was talk about the crowds and the NBL report that came out said 35,500 plus fans altogether. I would say, Olgun, some of the wording about beating last year's record crowd. Let me tell you, if year one of HoopsFest was not a record crowd, I would have some serious questions about who's doing the accounting and how it's possible. Of course, it's only been 2 years. We don't need to talk about smashing records when it comes to crowd attendance. We can build HoopsFest over the period of time. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think these events are always better in person than they are on TV. I'm just never going to be someone that gets all that excited about two teams in a neutral venue, which is why I don't know why the Ignite Cup is on the Gold Coast. Maybe that's a negative view of things. The other question I had was one of the marquee guests that they brought over, Allen Iverson. Now, I wouldn't say Twitter is necessarily the best place to gauge what people thought about this, but there were some criticisms that perhaps people that were there didn't get what they thought they were going to get from Allen Iverson. Did you see anything in that regard in terms of AI and how often he was there and what he was able to do? Do you think that was worth it?
Kane, Allen Iverson was not very present.
Okay.
We participated in a press conference with him. There were very limited, if any, one-on-ones with Allen Iverson. I know some of the appearances he did. He was not there for a long amount of time, if at all. There was just a general sense of apathy that was sort of steaming from him and his group of people, and they left. I'm pretty sure they left the event early. Whether that was planned or not, they left the event early. He probably on aggregate was at games for maybe 10 minutes each NBL game. So, but I think that for fans at home, the thing to realize is that when they initially announced Allen Iverson, I believe there was a spike in ticket sales. Mm-hmm. So the value of having someone like AI, or at least the perception that this guy's going to be there, it did encourage people to buy tickets and to attend. And I say this, we're around sort of NBA players and these sorts of people a lot, but to people, all the way in Perth, people in Australia, they don't get visibility just to see someone even in the same building as them, someone like Allen Iverson. So that does mean something to those people, but could he have been more present? 1 billion%. He was not very present. I don't know if there was a huge care factor from him, but from what I understand, I think they got their money's worth just from the pure spike in ticket sales that they got when they announced him.
Yeah, the league might have got their money's worth, but what about the people that paid their money to go over there to hopefully see him, and then he's only there for a quarter? So I think that would be very interesting to see how the league views that moving forward, whether they continue to go down that path of just trying to, pay guys to come out here and be a marquee guest. I'm not sure. I'm from afar. I'm literally just going off Twitter and what you've just said. So we'll see. But let us know again if you were there, if you wanted to see more from Allen Iverson, you didn't feel like you got your money's worth. Let us know how it all went down.
But Kane, let me say this though. It wasn't. I don't think HoopsFest is a TV product. This is a product for fans and people to go in person. Like you don't get like 80% of the value by watching television. You have to be there. You have to be around the fan zone. You got to be able to. You're staying in a hotel in the city. You walk the games. You see everybody in an NBA jersey. That's the reason It's like I'm not gonna. I don't know if I'll ever watch an NBA summer league game on television. There's no value for that for me. But going to it, there's value because you're amongst it, you're around it. It's the whole vibe of the place. So it doesn't surprise me that you were watching on television. You didn't really get to feel the aura of HoopsFest and being in Perth. You're just not going to get that from watching two neutral games on television a night.
No, totally agree. And I'm totally aware of that from being at, even All-Star weekends and those types of things. It's all the same thing. Like you have a very different perspective when you're at these events. So I think overall I had some questions about what you thought from being on the ground. But I do still think this is a fantastic idea, and I still think it's a big tick. We'll wait and see. We did have David Stevenson on Nothing But Net, the NBL CEO, last week, and he said Perth was trying to negotiate. He said, maybe in the next month or so, they will have something regarding what it could look like for next year. So we'll wait and see. But no doubt, HoopsFest is going to be coming back. And we did also have some basketball on the court, Olgun, and I said it off the top. I don't know how many consequential results there were or really shocking results there were. We're going to talk about Tasmania and Will Magnay later in this show. But let's talk about Southeast Melbourne and Adelaide because, no Nathan Sobey in this game. It's a top two clash. I commented on the NBL Instagram before the game and said, I feel like without Sobey, you have to pick Adelaide. But I kind of get the sense that Josh King is the type of coach that will love this challenge and have something up his sleeve. They win the game by 19 points. You were there. What stood out to you and what are the ramifications of this result moving forward for yours?
So there was like a sentiment going into this game that if the Phoenix didn't have Nathan Sobey, then they'll fall apart. I've always felt the exact opposite, which is the Phoenix are one of those teams that can go 10, 11, 12 deep, and they necessarily play in a very democratic way. It's a very equal opportunity. Whoever is playing well, whoever's competing hard is the guy that's going to play. And in this instance, no Nathan Sobey, he was at home with illness, but Ian Clark was the one who stepped up, and he very much needed this game. Him stepping in with effectively no pressure, the fact that he was going to step in and you're going to get the usage, you're going to get the shots, and he was able to do that. He nearly, 27 points. You had Owen Foxwell with a double-double. The entire starting unit, I think, finished in double digits. This was just a really, really impressive effort defensively from this group. That they had been one of the best defensive teams all season long, but there was a little drop off recently. So this game was a really good opportunity for them against one of the best offensive teams in the league to really sort of put a stamp on things, to say, hey, look, when push comes to shove, when we're in a big game, we can defend at the highest level. And that's exactly what they did. Adelaide came out hot in the first quarter, and then they really couldn't do much from that point on because of how handsy, how disruptive the Phoenix were. And then they were able to leverage that into their offense. And it was really funny. We speak about some of the signature wins. I think a lot of us remember like it was about a month and a half ago, we were waiting for the Phoenix to beat Melbourne United because they needed a signature win. And they did that. Then United went on a losing streak. So it's like, how much did that win really matter? And then they went and beat the Sydney Kings. And it's like, all right, that looks like a signature win too. But Xavier Cook sort of went down in that game, and it was very high scoring. It was a really weird game. They didn't really guard that well in that game, even though they won it. So is that a signature win? This is a signature win. If it's not, then I don't know what is. This is the win that catapults them truly and rightfully in the championship conversation.
Yeah, and they should really, it's tight all the way through, but with a 17-8 record, only 2 games in the loss column behind Adelaide, so they put themselves in the box seat for that top 2, which you understand is really, really important, a home semi-final series there. So the Phoenix would be feeling very happy. And, it's funny. I've said it a number of times. I think Josh King, there's no case for him being coach of the year, no case outside of Josh King. I still believe that. I tweeted that. There's a lot of love for Brian Goorjian, and I accept that. There's been some real challenges and adversity for the Sydney Kings. But the way Josh King prepares this team and gets them in, because there's been a wave of support for Nathan Sobey as MVP. And the large case has been because look what he has to do. Look at the offensive load he has to carry. Well, they just put up over 100 points against Adelaide without him. It's a hat tip to Josh King. And this roster is deep, as you pointed to, but he's doing a sensational job. A couple of numbers that stand out to me. You mentioned the disruptiveness, so 16 turnovers. And we know that this is their DNA. We know that that's what they do. And Mike Wells kind of pointed to that in the postgame. But the concern for Adelaide, and maybe it's not so much a concern because I think it's the type of performance you look at and you're like, all right, we can actually learn from this. There's enough time before the postseason. Maybe it's not the worst thing that we've lost a couple of games in a row. But the Phoenix had 32 field goal attempts at the rim and shot 66% on those. There were so many easy baskets in this game. And the percentage of those shots at the rim was 39. On the season, they averaged 36, and the three-point volume went way, way down. So ultimately, this was just too easy for the Phoenix to score. And I think Adelaide would understand that. The Phoenix played differently. I think they shocked them. Maybe you take your foot off the gas a little bit because Nathan Sobey isn't there. So I think there was a collection of things going on. Maybe they enjoyed some sun, a little bit, fatigued from the WA beaches for a couple of days. I'm not 100% sure. Not too much panic from Adelaide, but I think that's how the Phoenix won the game. I have got a question for you, though, Ogs. Who does the NBL MVP ladder on social media? Do you know who's actually behind this concoction that they put together every week?
It's a good question. My guess is would it be Evan at the NBL? That's my guess. And Ev is one of the sort of social media guys. I genuinely don't know. I don't think it's Andrew Gaze. I don't think it's that. Honestly, I think it's just like the power ranking of the week, effectively.
I thought it might have been Peter Hooley. They got that man working to the absolute bone over there. He does everything else. But I actually, because I do have a criticism because, I've been banging on the drum that anyone that says the MVP race is over really needs to stop and reevaluate what we're watching here between Sobey, Davis, and also Bryce Cotton. Now, Bryce Cotton, number one, you want to keep him there. I'm totally fine with that. If your argument was the winning percentage, things are getting really, really tight, though, now that Adelaide have lost 2 in a row, so you might need to reevaluate that. But they released it yesterday. And they still had Nathan Sobey at number 2. And when I sit here and think about this, if this is a changing scale, I understand it was only one game, but this is a weekly ranking. So you are basing it on what you've seen in the week prior. No Nathan Sobey. You beat the top team. Well, the Sydney Kings with Kendrick Davis, he puts up 23 points and 10 assists when there's no Daly, there's no Xavier Cooks, there's no Bull Quell replacement in the lineup yet. And I understand Kawhi played very well, but I think we're dangerously bordering on disrespect to Kendrick Davis here. I'm seeing campaigns for why Nathan Sobey can be MVP. Obviously, Bryce Cotton, because he might be playing the best basketball of his career. Come on, man. I can't be the only one showing love for Kendrick Davis. He had to be number 2 this week. This is very nitpicky, Olgun, but we're at that time of year. We've got to do that. He didn't even play. How does he hold number 2?
I mean, it might be because Nathan Sobey is sort of new to the conversation. He hasn't been in this sort of conversation in a couple of years, so maybe you give him more credit for that. I guess that's
no disrespect,
I'm completely playing devil's advocate there. And even saying that the MVP race is over. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I said it's functionally over. But I say that in the sense that Bryce Cotton is in the driver's seat, and I think he'll do everything in his power to make sure he wins it. I don't think he will sort of have such a slip up that he'll relinquish it. But it's definitely not over, especially with all these teams catching up to Adelaide. And the Adelaide question is fascinating in that they go 19-4, and then they lose 2 in a row to 2 good teams. And a lot of people want to panic because they go 0-2 over their last 2. And what is Adelaide? Are they what they were over their first 23 games where they go 19-4, or are they what they are now? There's probably, a lot of the good things they did in that first stretch. That's still what they are, but there are still tweaks they have to make on either end. I don't like the way they switch defensively. I think that points to the points in the paint, the attempts in the paint that you're talking about. I don't like the switching. It allows for a ton of O boards. I appreciate that they don't have some of the greatest, point of attack defenders and things like that, but I don't think they have to switch everything. And then offensively, I'm watching to see if they're able to develop an identity of any sort, because it just seems like even when things are going wrong, even when Bryce isn't shooting the ball well, seems like the directive is, okay, well, let's try to make sure Bryce shoots more. And I don't know if they maximize their other really talented players well enough, and that's across the board. So I think there are some tweaks that they've got to figure out there. And I'm with you on the Josh King Coach of the Year train, especially because they were not expected to be very good going into the year. And look at them now. They're not far off from that number 1 seed. But he's someone who, when you watch that team, you see him coach the team.
Yeah.
Like you can see his fingerprints on it. You can see the identity. You can see how the identity has grown and gotten better over the course of over the last few months. He is coaching the hell out of that team. And I will shout out Brian Gorgon, because how undermanned they are, the way they're playing, the style they're playing, that is clearly a nature of the way he's coaching them. So credit to him too. Really, the only other person who could enter the conversation, I think, is if the Adelaide 36ers put together a ton of wins and they finish the season, 28 and 27 and 6, and then you sort of have to put Mike Wells in there. But I think you can see Josh King coaching out there. You can see his fingerprints all over that team.
I think that's right. Yeah, it's really fun to watch just how passionate he is on the sidelines, and not passionate in the way that I'm yelling at refs, passionate in the way that I'm on my own guy's ass. And I'm like, come on, let's get it going. And if a player flops, I think it was DJ Mitchell flopped, and he's like, hey, get, he's yelling at him to get up. He's not looking at the ref. So, yeah, everything he does is so easy to appreciate. So I think it's a good point by you. And I'm having fun with the MVP race. It's 3 guys that are having great seasons, and I think they all deserve credit. Now, I would say the biggest news to come out of HoopsFest, you broke it, espn.com.au. We have another next star in this pool. His name is Luke Paul. You caught up with him. I want to listen to some of the chat now.
Luke Paul, congratulations on becoming a Next Star. Can you tell me what went into the decision to join the Next Stars program?
I think, it's a proven pathway. Guys like Josh Giddey and LaMelo Ball have come out in the pathway, and college landscape has changed so much with the NIL money and everything like that. But I think, just trusting the people in my circle and knowing that the NBL is the right pathway for me, and it's a proven pathway to get to the NBA. So I don't think it was a hard decision when choosing this pathway, but I know it's going to be a good one for me.
Well, firstly, that was Luke Paul, Australian point guard. Born in 2009, which is absolutely disgusting, Olgun. That just really doesn't even make any sense at all. But he's signed with the Next Star program, doesn't have a team yet. A very well-spoken young man. The rest of your chat, I assume, we'll be able to find or can find. I probably should have looked that up. You can tell us, Olgun. Nice work by you. What can you tell us about this kid and what to expect? And ultimately, more than what he just said, why he would choose the Next Star program at this very, very young age.
Yeah, so you can find the story. It's on espn.com.au. It's on our socials. So you can go and find it there. Look, Luke Paul's the youngest Next Star ever.
What about the video chat, Ogs? That's what I'm getting at.
The video chat is embedded in the story, Kane. Thanks for reading my work.
Nice.
Look, Luke Paul is the youngest player to ever sign with the Next Stars program. He's 6'6" point guard, really talented. I first got eyes on him at the Under-15 Oceania Cup early last year, and then he was fine. He wasn't really a primary guy on that team, so you saw glimpses. You think, like, you're a talented player. Then I saw him at the Under-16 Asia Cup later in the year, and he was a starting point guard under head coach Greg Vanderjagt, and the ball was in his hands, and he was elite. He was I likened him to Josh Giddey in the sense that he's this big, jumbo point guard who has a really good feel, high IQ, elite passer, underrated athlete, can shoot the ball. So he's got, a varied skill set, but the elite skill is the passing and the feel. So the idea of him, entering a team and being able to adapt really quickly to the program, to the pro game, you feel like he'll be able to do that because of the IQ. And it's a unique situation where he doesn't have a team. So he's sort of announced as a Next Star, and you wonder, all of these teams are about to pitch for him. What does he want from them? He told me he wants them to push him, but by the same token, allowing him to play through mistakes. And so that's what he wants in that team. And the fascinating thing about this is that he's so young that he's 2028 draft eligible. So this is a multi-year Next Stars deal. But what this also allows is for him to be a part of the Next Stars program for the first year. And the hope is that he has a fruitful first season as a Next Star, is able to sort of elevate his stock, elevate his hype to the point where his second year as a Next Star is that one and done year. But if the Next Stars program isn't for him, if for some reason it's not the right pathway for him, he still has the ability to just go to college after that, because he's not college eligible until that year anyway. And so this allows him some flexibility while also allowing the Next Stars program to have the first shot at having this guy be the next guy who goes from the Next Stars program to the NBA.
Hey, it was excellent work by you on espn.com.au, particularly the video placement at the top of the article. I loved it, Olgun, and everyone else should go check it out as soon as this podcast is done. Now, I have some follow-up
Crazy
questions.
work from you.
No, I have some-
I read all. I watch all of your work. I'm tuning into nothing but net Aussie hoops every week. That's crazy from you.
Mate, I just got back off a train. There's been a lot of snow over here. There's no Wi-Fi. Love Amtrak. Got to work on the Wi-Fi connectivity. That would be my argument moving forward. So, it's
You're on your Amtrak. You're Joe Biden up in here. My goodness.
Well, it's the only train. I don't know how else to get there. And I'm not driving in the snow. If anyone knows me, I ain't messing with that. That is not a safe situation for me or the other people on the road. Now, so he is so young. Would you say that this is the most exciting prospect at this age? Because we know what Josh Giddey did when he went to the Adelaide 36ers. Is this the most exciting Aussie prospect at this age since what, Ben Simmons? Is that a fair comment?
Well, yeah. Well, especially because Giddey was like a late bloomer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hype on Rocco Zikarsky was a very hyped prospect. Even Dash Daniels, and a lot of that was because of Dyson. But as a prospect, what Luke Paul could turn into when you watch him, there is a lot of hype, and a lot of the NBA teams around Perth over the course of this week were really excited to honestly just get eyes on him in person. Because consistently over Luke Paul's junior career so far, on the FIBA website, he's been listed at 6'2", and then he walks into the building and he's 6'6". And it's like there is a notable material difference between a 6'2" point guard and a 6'6" point guard when you're talking about their potential NBA prospects. And so this guy walks into the building and he's more imposing than you expect him to be. But honestly, between the skill set and the fact that there is a pathway there and he's already leaning into it, I don't know if there's been a more sort of hyped or exciting prospect, since Ben Simmons, since what Rocco was, since Dante Exum, that sort of player.
Yeah, I hope he goes to a situation where he can play. We've discussed this a lot with Dash Daniels, who, by the way, we say it all the time, he's still going to go to the NBA, no question, but I think it's been a difficult spot to evaluate because he's not playing in a prominent role where Josh Giddey was a starting point guard. And maybe Luke Paul, from what you say, is more that type of player like LaMelo, like a Josh Giddey that will have the ball in his hands all the time and can really show off the skill set. There was some health stuff with Rocco. Didn't perhaps go the way he wanted from where he started and he was mocked and then where he was eventually drafted. Now he's doing great things in the G League. But as you pointed to, he has this year. If next year doesn't necessarily work out, then I'm sure there's going to be absolutely zero shortage of high-profile schools that want to bring him over. So more than anything, at his age, it's cool that we're going to get a chance to see this guy. The Next Stars program looks like it's facing some challenges, Olgun, with everything that's going on in the college game, including the starting point guard of potentially a NBL championship winning team going to college next year, which is a fascinating situation. Last one real quick on Next Stars. Do you get the sense that the league is concerned, panicked, wondering where this Next Stars program goes? And perhaps more so for the international players rather than a local like Luke Paul at 16 that will sign and stay home for a pre-college year?
Well, you can tell that there's some, I guess, concerns or questions about the direction of it, considering who they're bringing in, right? And they've sort of had to pivot to, all right, this is a really young Australian.
Yep.
Now, NIL in college is obviously going to steal a lot of players from the NBL. You're not going to get to develop these players anymore. You're going to get them when they're 23, 24, 25. But what we are seeing is a lot of these players signing with NBL teams as development players in the year prior to going to college because they finished high school early in Australia. They have a period of time before they can do anything. They're either on an NBL team as a DP or they're just hanging out. So that's sort of the window to get these guys into the Next Stars program. And then the hope is that they're having a fruitful season and then they continue on one more season or more seasons as a Next Star and then potentially get drafted. So it's almost like the NBL, the Next Stars program is pivoting to, can we get these gap year guys and convince them that this is the right opportunity for them, so then they can potentially forego that NIL money. It's just that the sell is just different for the Next Stars program now. Now it's, hey, come to the NBL. We definitely can't pay you as much as what this college can pay you. But if you come here and you're a Next Star, you're sort of one of one or one of two or three or four Next Stars here. So the eyes on you are sort of more refined, as opposed to if you go to college, you're one of 1,000 potential professional prospects, and that's a really tough sort of camp to be in. So I think the sell changes, but naturally the money in NIL makes it makes the landscape of recruiting next stars way more difficult than it used to be.
Yeah, if you get to the end of your next star season and you believe that you have a promise, you believe that you're a first-round lock in the NBA, maybe that makes sense. If you're pushed out and it's a concern, maybe you're like, hey, we can go to college and make a stack of cash and play in a more expansive role. But it's going to be really fascinating to see what club is able to lock him down and what opportunity appeals to him. But in the chat with you, as he said, he's ready to be coached, which you'll love to hear. So it's really, really good stuff from you there, Olgun. It is time now to get to StatMate Streak Watch. Download StatMate for all your NBA hot stats completely free. I mentioned I was in Philadelphia on Thursday, Friday, into Saturday morning over here on the US. The Cavs were in Philadelphia for 2 games, one on Wednesday night. I did not see that one live. The one on Friday night, I did see live. And it made me think we should talk about Tyrese Proctor a little bit here. And the stat that I've got for you, Olgun, his 3-point attempt rate at 0.624, which means essentially 62% of his field goal attempts are 3-pointers right now. And if you're at home saying he's not playing a lot, I hear you. Maybe not the biggest sample size of all time, but I would counter that with the fact that in his 3rd year at Duke, his 3-point attempt rate was around 60%. This is a guy that his role from Duke, which we saw evolve when he was playing with Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel and all these guys on that Duke team that probably should have won the national championship, it is translated to the NBA. And while the minutes aren't there in a big way yet, he looks like an NBA player to me, Ogs.
Yeah, I think everyone has to realize that when you go up levels, you do have to change your game. The guy, you look at every role player in the NBA, all of these guys were star players in high school. And then they go to college and they're sort of either star players or borderline star players. But then you go to the NBA and there's 1 or 2 stars a team. So you have to figure out where your niche is. How can you see minutes? And that's locking in defensively, making that the elite part of your game, or like Tyrese Proctor, making sure that you are a high-level spot-up shooter. Now, again, as a junior with him, a lot of it was off the dribble, and because he was the prominent guy on all of his teams. But he knows that in order to get minutes, he has to make the 3-point shooting part of his game the elite skill, and I think he's doing that. And we've in HoopsFest, some of the Cavs people were down here, and I spoke to Mike Gansey, part of their front office, and he said we love Tyrese Proctor. He said he's a hard worker. He knows what we want from him. Obviously, the minutes are up and down because of the nature of the roster, but everyone in Cleveland, everyone that's part of that organization, they love what Tyrese Proctor is bringing to them.
Yeah, and that's why when he did go back to college and he could have had an opportunity certainly to leave after year 1, went back for year 2, again, could have been a guy that could leave after year 2, decides to come back from year 3. And to your point, sure, the minutes were more. He was playing 30 minutes a game. He was a starter on that really good Duke team, but he was the 3rd or 4th option offensively. So he's actually essentially playing the same role, just in reduced minutes, but you feel like he's in a good spot when that role does come around. So it's a hat tip to Tyrese Proctor, no doubt. Cavs, maybe just starting to figure things out a little bit since Christmas. They're looking decent. They've got to get healthy, though. Darius Garland, come on, man. You got to look after that big toe, the great toe. He just can't get it healthy. But download StatMate to play more or less. Just make 5 player predictions daily for your chance to win $1,000. Now, I did sit down with Tyrese Proctor and, to your point, asked him about the challenges of being a rookie, perhaps on this Cavs team that is star-studded and the opportunities aren't necessarily there.
And you're an athlete, you want to play. How have you found that, and what are some of the things that you've found to keep yourself ready to go?
Yeah, I think a big thing is a lot of films. I'm really close with Don, and we've been talking a whole lot. Whether it's flying back from away games, watching the games on film that I might not have played or that I have played, but I think that gives me a little head start on games where I come in and I can find little pockets to impact the game, and like I said, just lifting. So I think a big thing for me is my body and getting my body to the level to be able to sustain 82 games in the season, and it's such a big jump from Duke. It's going to take more wear and tear on your body.
It's interesting sound from Tyrese talking about what goes into being a guy. Everyone says just stay ready. What you see with a lot of these guys that aren't actually playing, they could be working just as hard or harder than the guys that are playing because they get put through the ringer in practice. They have to do all the extra stuff to make sure they're ready. A few hours after that chat, they play against Philadelphia. Garland was out, and he ended up having 13 points in 11 minutes. And you talk about a competitor. There was a moment. So he has 13 points. He's playing really well, a couple of steals, a couple of rebounds. He has an assist as well. Highly impactful basketball. Defensively as well. He's got great size for a guard. He gets subbed out. And you could see when the horn blows, the subs are coming. He's like looking over his shoulder, Olgs, and he's like, "Come on, man, don't take me out, don't take me out." He gets taken out of the game, and he had a few words for the assistant coach. He wasn't happy because he's like, "I'm playing good basketball, leave me out there." And then what we saw, the Cavs go on to win the game. But a couple of minutes after that, where he was frustrated, he went up to that assistant coach, dapped him up, said, "My bad, man. I'm cool now. I was just a little bit heated at the time." But, looking at him up close, you see the size, particularly the skill set with the three-point shot. We know that the Boomers lack three-point shooting, particularly with those guards. And a lot of guys, it's almost the Australian way. You come from here, excellent defense. Giddy's a little bit different. The three-point shot has come along, but came out with questions about his three-point shot. Tyrese Proctor is one of the best shooting prospects we've had in Australia in a very, very long time. And to me, he's an absolute lock for the World Cup and Boomers core because they need exactly what he brings to the table.
It would surprise me if Tyrese Proctor doesn't start for the Boomers in major tournaments from 2027 onwards.
Don't you feel like that's a bit under the radar, though? I think his name sometimes just maybe because he did play college and he wasn't under our nose and he wasn't in those previous tournaments. I don't feel like I hear him discussed as much as the other young guys. He's only 21 years old.
It's just probably because he's new to the NBA, and also it's interesting when you go to college, when you don't go through the NBL, you're not in the sort of the consciousness of the Australian public as much because you're plying your trade abroad, right? We see it with guys who go to Europe and Japan and things like that. But from a skill set perspective, and just from how good he is, right? Just his capacity, he seems like the obvious fit to slot into that Patty Mills role, right? That the skill set is really, really similar. And especially in the FIBA game, that's where I think what we maybe don't see as much of in the NBA, because Proctor is more of an ancillary player. I think there could be way more on-ball creation from Tyrese Proctor in the FIBA game. And I think it would surprise me if, again, assuming everyone stays healthy, that Giddy, Proctor, Daniels, as your 1, 2, and 3, that feels like the Boomers, the core of the Boomers for the next 10 years. Right. And I think the balance is there. I think the skill sets are there. I think there's awesome positional size in that lineup too. Like that seems like the most clear-cut thing. And then it's with the rest of the lineup, where do you want to go? Right. Jock Landau for the foreseeable future is the starting 5-man. And then where do you want to go? Do you want to go Johnny Furphy at the 4? Do you when Alex Tui is up there, do you go him? Is it Nick Kay for how long? Is Xavier Cooks part of it? Which direction you go is up to Adam Capehorn. But that 1, 2, and 3, no matter what lineup's out there, I think that's going to be really effective on both ends. And like Tyrese Proctor is, again, the most obvious guy to step into that role.
The world is getting better, but we're very lucky with all these young guys. It's so much fun getting to see them develop and get an opportunity like that and grasp it. And to be fair, Tyrese has grabbed every opportunity they've given him this year. He's proven that he can score. As I said, he's not just a shooter. He was impactful in a number of ways. You'll be able to catch the rest of that chat either on Nothing But Net this week, but it should be on the ESPN socials, all those types of things. My socials, we'll share it around. He had lots of great stories about playing his first NBA game in Madison Square Garden, getting his first start, lots of family stuff. He's a great kid. It was a great story. It was good to catch up with him, and obviously it's very exciting with what he's doing and a part of this future, as you pointed to, Olg. So keep an eye on Tyrese Proctor, even though the numbers, the stats, the playing time, maybe not jumping off the page, but he's quietly impressing. And you love the fact that he's attached himself to Donovan Mitchell as well. That is a guy that is a leader and can teach him all about what it's like to be an all-NBA guy and an all-star player.
And Kane, let me just say, finally, a Sydney product. A Sydney product heading to the NBA. Tyrese Proctor lives 5 minutes from where I live in Sydney. So all these players coming through from Melbourne, good on you. Melbourne's a great city, sure. But city of Sydney, especially South Sydney, we're finally representing the NBA. We had Jonah Bolden for a moment, which was awesome. But Tyrese Proctor, Sydney represent.
I thought you were part of the NBL. What's this all about?
I have to constantly remind people that I work for ESPN and not the NBL.
Okay. No, the NBL. That's the theory online about the NBL. But anyway, that's you're biased to Sydney. That's totally fine. We'll see how that goes for the rest of the NBL season. Hey, we spoke about the Boomers. A big man that was pretty important in the last Olympics in Paris and still only 28 years of age, 27, 28 years of age. Will Magnay went down. Tassie lost to Melbourne United 99-97. In the end, it could be a consequential loss. The fact that Will Magnay went out with around a couple of minutes left, I don't think really had a big bearing on the game. He still played 30 minutes, Olgs. But where does this sit right now? We've discussed Tasmania. unlikely before this incident that they would move from 6. They look pretty rock solid. They've been playing good basketball, but if they don't have Will Magnay, they're in trouble.
I mean, and the worst thing about this injury is that when you watch it, you see nothing. There's no, you don't see the injury. So this is sort of as non-contact as it gets. That looks like whatever happened to that foot happened on the way up. Like he jumped and he hurt it, and it was the sort of thing when Will Magnay has had a sort of extensive injury history. He knew that something was wrong. I was in the player hotel after that game, and he came in on crutches, not bearing any weight on it. And then the fear out of that Jack Jumpers camp is that he's probably done for the season. So he's gotten some scans. There's definitely, I think that the early fear was it was a broken foot, but we'll wait and see what those scans confirm. But the Jack Jumpers are assuming that he'll be out for the season. That's what they're preparing for. And what this, unfortunately, I think this sort of removes the Jack Jumpers from the championship race. They were one of the sort of the teams trending upwards. They were one of those teams that I don't know if anyone wanted to face in a semifinal series, assuming they got there because of where they were going, because of they have a defensive anchor in Will Magnay and they have Bryce Hamilton who can go and be the best player on the floor if he wants to. So this was a team that was trending upward and they were probably going to make some noise in the championship race. I don't see that happening anymore. Their ceiling dramatically drops because of this Magnay injury. And then the other question is what happens to his impending free agency. He's a free agent this offseason. There are other bigs on the market. We pointed to Sam Menenga, Sam Wardenberg. And the question is, because of Magnay's injury history, especially in the lower extremities, who wants to get into the Will Magnay business? That's going to be a legitimate question that's asked around the league as we enter free agency.
It really sucks, man. You know, I've probably pushed the Tasmania propaganda. And so I was,
I know.
yeah. Sad times, man. I mean, quietly getting more excited about what they've been able to do the longer the season has gone. But the one caveat we had on all of this all season long was the reliance on Will Magnay. He was playing big-time minutes for this team. To be honest, I don't think they would have done damage from 6th anyway because it's just such a tough road with the quality of teams that are above you. And I don't think they could have got out of 6. It would have been such a challenge, 12 and 14, even though they win that game, they're at 500. But I think your point about the future is really interesting. I'd be curious to hear what Tasmania fans think about this. Get in the comments. Would you still be willing to sign him up and risk the year-on-year fear? Because, look, he has played 24 games this year, but there has been a number of occasions where he has been hurt or gone down, and you immediately think the worst with this guy, and it's just unfortunate. But last year, he played 25 games. NBL 24, 27, NBL 23, 22, NBL 22, 11. So 24 was the most games they won. They went on and win the title there. Even with that season, on average, he's missing double-digit games per season. He's far too important to go into every year thinking that the chances are he's going to be gone for more than 10 games, Olgs. It's a really tough position to be in. I hope he gets healthy. He is the most impactful player on this team. We just haven't seen enough of him.
I'll put it like this. I think at his best, Will Magnay is a more effective player than Joe Luala Jr., right? And that's not diminishing JLA. He's an excellent player. But I think Will Magnay at his best, there's a reason why he's a boomer. At his best, he's such an impactful player, and I think a more impactful player than JLA. He makes around half of what JLA makes. And a lot of that is because the best ability is availability. And JLA has that, Magnay doesn't. Now, entering this free agency, even if there are teams that are willing to pay a reasonable amount for Magnay, I don't think he's going to get the amount that the market has has shifted in that all of these bigs are getting these massive contracts, like they're getting these boosts. I don't know if Magnay is going to get that, and then that leads to the question of, even if there is some money in the NBL, at what point does Magnay think about his sort of life and the idea of, maybe it's time to start maximizing the remainder of my career, however long he has left. And does that mean Japan? Does that mean Europe? Right? And because there is more money in those markets. And so I fear that this is maybe a catalyst of him starting that Nick K Japan sort of route, because however long I have left, try to stay as healthy as possible. But do I just maximize the remainder of my career and cash out in Japan?
Yeah, I hope he's got 6, 7, 8 years left. But I would agree. Go get your money, man. This guy's going to be a legend forever in Tassie. They won that title. It was history. He was a highly, if not the most influential part of that, along with all those guys that were there, McVeigh and Doyle and obviously Scotty Ross. So hope for the best for him. whatever slim chance there is that he plays this year, I hope that he can come back. But that is a savage blow for the Tassie Jack Jumpers. But Olgun, you've been so busy, man. You're about to hit the road to Canberra. HoopsFest, unbelievable. Certainly a little jealous that I wasn't down there, but you have taken me inside and wrapped it up perfectly for me. So, I appreciate you, man. You've been working hard all weekend, and it's always good to catch up with you. I'm glad you're awake and looking fresh.
You should try and come to the next one. I know you're busy out there going to Texans games and all that, but try to come to a HoopsFest. It's the summer league as much as the Blitz is. HoopsFest seem more like the summer league of the NBL and of Australia. Everyone was there, a ton of NBA teams. It's the place to be. And again, you just walk the streets of Perth, you see people. But yeah, I'm heading to Canberra right after this record stops to watch some of the best up-and-coming Australians at the National Performance Camp. So I'm excited for that.
Love it, mate. We'll catch up with all your news at espn.com.au. I'll let you in just in my last thought and a little behind the scenes. So I said we had NBL CEO David Stevenson on the show last week. Before we chatted, we were just having a chat in the break. You said I should come to HoopsFest. He said, we would love to have you out in Australia more often. And I said, Dave, anytime the NBL wants to bring me out there, I will be there. My bags are packed. And it was met with silence. No response. No response. This was the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. I'm Kane. That's Olgun. We'll see you next week.